Alright guys, so we have another hand here that is really, really interesting at a lot of advanced levels, even though we're reviewing 1-3 here on the Stones live stream. And this is going to come about where Igor in seat number 7 is just going to limp in here with ace king, something that I would very rarely do unless I had a reason to do it at 1-3. I think ace king is too good to not raise preflop. And then we have Robert Y, two people to his left, makes it 16 with pocket kings. Okay, that's fine. So we get a limp here, UTG1. Robert makes it 16 with pocket kings. You can see the effective stacks are about $615. He makes it 16. And Cobra calls in the big blind, so we see it three ways here, with Robert being the preflop raiser. Now, one of the things that I will sometimes do, not necessarily as a limper, but I will sometimes call a raise preflop with ace king, and I will continue on if I don't hit. This board I would probably continue on with, especially in position, or like a paired board like 9 deuce deuce against a single preflop raiser where I think ace king fares to still be the best hand. I'll continue on to a C bet, maybe even multiple bets, something like that. This is a little bit strange here because Igor limp called, and now he's going to lead into this board for not like a huge bet. He bets 25 into what was about 49 or 50, so we'll call it a half pot size bet. Now, with a very high frequency at a small game like this at 1-3, where I don't expect a guy to limp call and lead with a very strong hand. And again, I expect this particular player or any particular player, UTG1, to raise with pocket jacks, raise with pocket tens. So when he leads, if he's leading with a strong hand, it is basically only going to be jack ten suited, which is three combinations, spades, clubs, and diamonds, or pocket threes. But usually people check to the preflop raiser. So even though there are three combos of threes and three combos of jack ten suited, how often is he leading in for half pot into this type of board? It's probably like out of those six combos, maybe one out of the six, if that, less than 20% of the time. And for that reason, and with the board being somewhat drawy, and being in a 1-3 game where I don't expect a jack to fold, I'm going to be raising with a pretty high frequency if I'm in Robert Y's spot here with pocket kings. Like, I'm going to be raising maybe 75, 80, if not more percent of the time. Now, Robert Y decides to just flat. Okay. Cobra gets out of the way with his sixes, and now we roll to the turn, which is a total blank. The pot is 100. Remember, Robert Y is the preflop raiser against a UTG1 limp call. Igor continues to bet here, and this time he bets again about a little under half the pot, 40 or 50. And Robert Y just calls again. If I had just flatted with kings, which I would very rarely do on the flop, and then I faced another half pot size bet on the turn, I would think that this would be extremely consistent with Jack X, and I would be raising turn here because I wouldn't expect to get a bet at the end. Unless for some reason I wanted to just call and represent like I busted out on some sort of front door heart draw. But that's usually not going to be the best approach to winning the most money at this level, which is a live 1-3 game. So I'd very rarely find myself in Robert Y's spot, raising a UTG1 limp, just calling a half pot size flop bet, just calling a turn bet, etc., etc. Now the river rolls off the queen of hearts, which is quite interesting, and which is why I picked this particular hand to analyze. If I somehow played Igor's hand in this manner as a limp call UTG1 with ace king, and then a lead on flop and a lead on turn. And now, all of a sudden, I make the nut straight on the river. What would I be thinking about in this $200 pot? Now, No Limit Hold'em is all about playing off of your opponent's range, not necessarily your own cards. But you can get a lot of information about the entire hand based upon your own hole cards. For some reason, if I got into this situation, I would certainly look back at my hand, which Igor did not do. And the important part of this is the fact that Igor has the King of Hearts in his hand. And the reason why that is so important, and the reason why I would never check this river as played as some sort of weird bluff flop, bluff turn with 2 overs and a gut shot, is the fact that the queen, the 10, and the jack of hearts are out there. We have the King of Hearts. So what possible flush do we lose to? We only lose to some sort of raise that was made by suited connectors in the form of 7-8 of hearts, 8-9 of hearts, which would be a straight flush, something like that. And I would say that with some propensity, or ace-x of hearts, like ace-9 of hearts, ace-8 of hearts, and I would say at some frequency, if that person raised with that hand to isolate the UTG1 raiser, he would raise at some point, usually on the flop. So if we play ace-king with specifically the King of Hearts in this manner, we basically have the nuts at the end. It is going to be so rare that our opponent is ever going to run into a flush, okay, for us to be scared of. That's number one. Number two, at this level, we can't depend on our opponent making thin value bets. Like Robert's got kings, maybe he has aces. Even if he were to have like pocket jacks, pocket tens, whatever it is. We've seen the earlier hands that I've done in this particular video where he's checked back some strong hands. People at 1-3, they want to go to showdown. They don't want to be faced with some sort of decision. So you can't check this river. He's going to be checking back so much. And even if he happens to run into pocket queens and he bets, and what are you going to do? Just call or make a check raise? It looks stronger than you just coming out and betting. So even though it looks like, oh, well, I led with hearts and now I'm going to check at the end, the guy's going to check back so much. The fact that we've got the King of Hearts in our hand, and when you look at the nature of everything in this hand and the board distribution, you just can't play the hand in this manner. Like I said, I can't imagine coming to the river with this line from UTG1, but if I happen to, there's no way I can check the end. There's no way. Because what, am I hoping that he has ace-7 of hearts that he didn't raise the flop with? And now I'm going to just check call? I mean, you look at this, and I don't know what Igor is thinking, but I am very experienced in like getting into the head of a typical live small stakes player, that usually when somebody checks on the river like this, it's because they're scared and they're going to check call. So say Igor checked and Robert Y bet 125. I can almost guarantee you that Igor would just call, even though it's almost impossible that he loses. So he's checking with the intention of check calling, which is, again, probably very, very, well, it's just not going to be the best way to maximize your value at this level. Now, it doesn't surprise me from what we've seen before that Robert just checks it down. We can talk about, like, if I had flatted with kings on the flop and on the turn, the guy checked the river, it's probably pretty close. I mean, the guy here might be scared of ace-king. He might be scared of hearts. He might have bet with jack-10. If he had led with jack-10 or a set, it's very, very possible that he would check the river. And I'm not exactly sure what you would get in terms of value if you bet the river with 2 kings, because probably the bottom portions of his range that you beat in terms of a limp call and leading flop and leading turn would be like king jack. You block that with 2 kings. So you beat ace jack and you beat king jack. And how often are those playing and calling? How often are those playing in this manner of limp calling, betting flop, betting turn, and betting, and check calling river. Like if he's got ace jack or king jack, is he check calling river all that much? He doesn't really beat anything. So even though I think that Robert missed some value in some of the earlier hands that we went over, I don't mind this check back. But Igor, if he's going to play this hand this way, I mean, you've got to look at your own hand and look at some of the blockers here in terms of figuring out maximum value.